It is the dream of every creator, storyteller, and entrepreneur to learn how to communicate with integrity in a noisy world, especially these days where there is a trust recession. My guest today believes that your message is more than marketing. It's a mirror of your meaning, your values, and the impact you want to have. And in a world filled with shortcuts, quick hacks, and loud voices, she teaches people how to rise above the noise with clarity, truths, and confidence. If you've ever felt overwhelmed trying to show up online, unsure on how to articulate what you do, or afraid of being misunderstood, this conversation is your reset. We are talking about meaning, message, and marketing, and how to align them without burning out or losing yourself in the process. So, if you're an author, an entrepreneur, or someone trying to venture into that space, grab your notebook, your tea, your water bottle, whatever your ritual is, because this episode is about to pour clarity back into your voice and your purpose. Welcome to the Minute Mastery Podcast, a conversational productivity and time management podcast where busy authors and entrepreneurs are inspired to create time for what truly matters. I'm your host, Ngozi Edema. I'm a time management coach, writer, and entrepreneur. Here, you are encouraged to turn your minutes into milestones and to create at least 1 hour a day working on your goals without feeling overwhelmed. And since you are here, I thought I'd let you know of a storybook to gift your favorite kids. Once upon a time, and they lived happily ever after. Children love those phrases. I love them too, and I suspect you may love them too. As a mom, I've spent hours reading and listening to my children read their favorite stories, and now I write stories too. Here is one of them you may want to check out. The Proud Sunflower. It is the story of Princess Sanzu, the Sunflower Princess, a princess loved by all, but who got into trouble. Within the pages of The Proud Sunflower, you encounter what real beauty is. Your kid will love the beautiful story and powerful illustrations. The Proud Sunflower serves as a gentle reminder that we all need to stand on the shoulders of others to succeed. So, read this story with your little ones and allow it to illuminate the universal language of empathy, forgiveness, and personal growth. The Proud Sunflower is a top book of parenting, morals, and responsibility, and it's available on the Kindle store and on paperback formats. Excellent for beginner readers. Click in this episode show notes or in the description on YouTube to order yours. And check out my other storybooks to read with your kids, or gift a child a storybook if you do not have kids of your own. Laura Nicholls is a writer, a strategist, and former therapist who helps visionaries turn their lived experience into books and messaging that clarify their purpose, expand their impact, and align their work with who they have become. You're welcome to the show, Laura.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
I'm happy to have you. It's exciting. I don't know how all this conversation will go, but I really like
All
what
right.
you do. You're talking about people's lived experience and turning that into a book. It has been the core of my messaging for years. We all have stories. We want to tell people our stories. So today, I'm looking forward to how we can put these messages out into the world so that people can really understand. And we are talking about communication. So when you think about the word meaning, where does a person's message truly begin? And how do they reconnect to their deeper purpose?
I love this question. And I think it's such a great way to start this conversation because, for me and the people that I work with and support, meaning comes from your lived experience. And sometimes when I say that, people will respond that, but I don't have a big dramatic story and I always remind them that it doesn't matter because there is meaning in your lived experience. And now we get to sit down and understand what that is, because whatever the story is, whether it's dramatic or traumatic or it's just your life, someone out there needs to hear that, more than one someone obviously, but we create meaning from, again, our lived experience, and in that we find understanding for what our purpose is. Clarifying the past, to me, is what opens up the future. and allows us to move into how we serve through where we've been and how we can impact others and help them find their purpose. Because in telling our stories and finding meaning in our narrative, we have this opportunity to help others find themselves in our stories also, and to achieve insights that they may not have been able to get to yet, and encouragement and inspiration. And in that lies the purpose.
Thank you. Several times in your conversation, you use the term lived experience. I kind of resonate with lived experience than typing into Google to get the same information. For instance, if I have a rash, if I see someone who have had similar rashes before, I'm
Mhm.
more inclined to talk to them if they found a solution than to
Mhm.
go to Google to tell me that. You understand?
Sure.
Because I believe that if I can see evidence that someone has succeeded in something, that resonates with me. And many of us like such lived experience, like somebody telling you, I've done this before and it worked for me, and
Mhm.
I recommend it to you, or this is what I learned from my experience, so
Mhm.
that you don't go through the same trauma that I went through.
Yeah.
So lived experience is always a golden thing for all of us, that I cannot hand you that. So what does it look like when someone's meaning and their messaging are out of alignment?
Another great question. I do want to touch on something that you said though, which is
Okay,
that
yeah, no
when we're
problem.
when we're talking about our lived experience and the meaning that we are making of it, it's not again about like the details and that this thing happened to me. It's this journey that we've been on, and what was that process? And most often what the reader, what your people, your audience want and need to know about isn't necessarily the big transformation on the end. That's very inspiring and that's important, but it's
Okay,
the pain points along the way. And again,
okay,
it's the finding themselves in that story also, because they aren't perhaps on the other end yet. I think that's what people connect to the most. You used the term trust recession, which I loved when you introduced this show. And I think it's, when we're talking about this, I also kind of want to lay in the disclaimer that I'm really careful for this process to never be performative, meaning like it's not another strategy, it's not another tactic, it's not another way to sell. It's what we're all feeling if we look at the narrative arc of the internet and social media right now, is that we're coming down this other side. And as you touched on, we are craving human connection. We're burnt out. We are disenchanted. We're not trusting, and we're wanting, in my experience and my networking and my time out, because I went underground with social media as much as I could for about 8 years, meaning I was not active. I did the bare minimum. I managed other people's stuff, but I really kind of laid low and have just sort of reemerged in the last year. And in the circles that I travel in and the conversations that I'm having, people, I don't want to say desperate, but almost just for human contact, for touch, for meaning touch points of humanity, for connection and trust. So I like to lead into this conversation with really being clear that again, this is, when we're talking about your narrative and making meaning with your messaging, that it's not the newest marketing tactic. I would like to think that it's a call back to our humanity during these times. And for me, that's a value I hold really closely in this work. So yeah. And then just to move into your question,
yeah,
hopefully
I
that,
like I like that you went back there, because yes, many times we talk about the transformation only, but we don't talk about the pain that is
yeah.
part of the journey. And then, so some people are confused that some people are having it all good because it's only the transformation we see. We don't see the messy
Mhm.
parts that
Yeah,
led to the transformation. So yes, that is a good place to start. Thank you
yep,
very much for bringing that up. So
sure.
what does it look like when someone's meaning and their messaging are out of alignment?
I think that there are these clear signposts that show up, and hopefully, we have the awareness to pay attention to those. And some of them for me are burnout. They're being in hustle and striving and struggling mode. They're hating your business, which I do come across people who don't like their businesses very much. They've lost touch with the original vision that brought them into the place of creating it in the first place. I think it's also a matter of when you're not attracting the right quote unquote right people into your world, meaning, and when I say that, I mean people that they don't feel in alignment. They're not necessarily, there's a lot of layers there. We could talk about like your ideal avatar and get into kind of marketing jargon, but I think it's a more visceral feel in your business when there's a disconnect. Things are not flowing and you're feeling it in a lot of different areas. Like I said, maybe it's your audience is no longer responding, or they're not, it's, you're not a match. What you're doing, what you're offering, what you're serving, somehow they came into your world, but there's a disconnect there. I've had the experience of working in businesses for years where suddenly there was a disconnect with a list of 22,000 people who used to be very responsive, and then all of a sudden they weren't. Like, what happened there? And that's to me where kind of the human, that's where the psychology comes in. That's where it's like understanding, like, okay, what's the disconnect here? Because we're not communicating anymore. We had entered into a relationship. Now that's fallen away. So again, I guess, my answer to that would be that it's multi-layered, but there are different little signposts that I have observed. And a business can stop being productive for a variety of reasons, but I think messaging is a main pillar. So there's kind of that more pragmatic side of that, meaning like, okay, my business isn't flowing anymore. But then there's also the very personal side that I talked about when I first started answering this question, which is that visceral feel about your business and your ability to be in inspired action. Does it feel like you're dragging yourself through your days and you don't like showing up for your business anymore? Then something is likely off in your messaging, because at the core, what's underneath your messaging is your beliefs, right? About your business and about what you're doing in the first place. And I find that sometimes people need to circle back to that and regroup around why they're doing what they're doing, which is a very, that's kind of entrepreneur 101, right? We all start there with like, what's your why? But I think that we forget when we get into the weeds of our businesses, and we can get into an energy of, again, striving and anxiety, and we can really lose touch with what it is we're doing in the first place. When I have helped business owners write books, most often they're people that I've already been helping with their marketing copy and strategy, and they end up getting to a point where they want to write a book. And almost 9 times out of 10, there is some kind of clarity that comes through that process, some aha, some new direction, something that emerges because they're seeing their message sort of laid out in book format. It's a longer form, right, than an email or a sales page or website copy. And it's really cool. It's one of the parts that I love most about helping people with that, is that there's something they uncover in the process, reconnection with what it is they're doing in the first place, even if they've been in business for years.
Okay. So when you help them with their writing, are you helping them as a ghost writer, or you are helping them as someone who gives them direction on how they can write their books themselves?
I all of it.
All of it.
And sometimes I say, my background is as a therapist, and you mentioned that. I feel like that sometimes about being a book coach, because there are so many degrees of what people need help with, how much they want to be involved. To some people, it's very important that they do the writing themselves. And then I serve as like a sounding board and someone to guide them through the process, because it can feel really big. It kind of hurts my heart a little bit that so many people want to write books, and there's so many things that get in their way because they feel like it's too big. There's self-limiting beliefs like, who am I to write a book? Nobody wants to hear what I have to say, and yet I have this compulsion that I feel like I do have something. So there's a lot there that I help people kind of tease out. And sometimes, yes, there are books that I have sat down and written cover to cover. Usually they've been with people who, again, I've been involved in their business, so I know their story, I know them, I know their process. Other people show up with like, this is very common, that I started this manuscript and it's been sitting on my shelf for a really long time, and they need someone to help just kind of pull them through the process. So I found it's fun for me to meet people where they are in the process and understand what's important to you here. Like, is it that you just want the book written? Then I can do that for you. And I interview them, and then I get their, create the content from that those conversations. And other people, like I said, it's important to them that they like have their actual hand, pen to paper, if you will. So I respect and help with that as well.
Thank you. So do you help them market as well?
I do. That's also as I ventured into, I started off as a copywriter, but books kept showing up for me, even though I was never like actively sought them. They just kept turning up, and it was one of those signs from the universe, right, in your businesses. And I also really enjoy the two kind of writing muscles of copywriting and books are very different, and yet they support one another. And so in that venture, you learn from, as you move into serving people, you learn about what they need and what you like. And marketing is a huge thing that came up. I also talked to people who already have a book, and they're like, it's just kind of sitting around. And so, when I do these shorter books for people's businesses, I do provide them with like the launch materials and the thank you page and the landing, on all that piece. because that feels really big for a lot of people. And so it's a piece of support that comes up often. And then looking at kind of like the bigger strategy for them, because everybody has there are different goals for books. Some people I work with use them like how can I say, they do speaking engagements like in person and conferences and big, events and that kind of thing. And showing up with a book in hand and being able to say they're an author is really does something for themselves, for their confidence, and also opens doors in more practical ways. I've seen some really, really fun impacts that way when people are showing up. So yes, and it depends on the person. I think marketing can be very personal. We have to go outside our comfort zones, but you also have to find what is realistic and feels good to you and what you're going to actually do. So when I work with somebody around their marketing for their book, those are the two biggest things we focus on is what their goals are for it and what's sustainable. What are they actually going to do? And maybe they're not going to love it a ton at first, but what's realistic and something that they can immerse themselves in.
Yeah, it's amazing what people can do with books, which is one thing I know about books is that it gives you instant credibility
Mm.
and it also helps you market any other thing that you are into. I remember I once went to a furniture shop to buy beddings. I wanted a duvet and other things for my bed. And they had this book on sleep, how to sleep better, which I told the woman, I said, that's a cool, really cool thing. You have a book on sleep and you're selling a bed.
Right. Yeah. I
How
know.
to sleep better. I said, that's
That's
a really,
fair.
really cool idea. So
Yeah.
some people can come up with a very amazing ideas on how to sell their books because
Hmm.
obviously if I'm going to buy something, I bought the book. I'll tell you I bought the book. But if I'm going to buy something on bed, is because I'm interested in sleep in some ways. That's why my bedding is important to me. And so
Sure.
I now go there and I see something on how to have a good sleep. And I'm like, wow, that's cool. So yeah, there's different ways we could use books.
Yeah.
Options are just huge. A lot of options out there. It's just for us to just sit down and look at them and see what works for us or what works for the clients. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, as you were talking, I'm just thinking about there's the selling of the book itself. And I always kind of caution people like, you're not going to make $1 million off this book, this $10 book on Amazon. I mean, you might, and that would be amazing. I don't ever discourage anybody, but every once in a while, someone will come into my world who like, my book's not selling. And it's like, well, it's part of a bigger picture, really. I mean, there's a one that I'm looking at right now on my shelf, actually, this business that I worked in for like 7 years now, and I've written a book for the brand. And as a coach within the community with these people and the members and stuff, and I cannot tell you how many people would say, "Oh yeah, I bought the book first on Amazon," and then they ended up, this $10 book, and then they end up joining this. I think at the time it was like a $1,200 program, which was kind of the point. Somebody I touched on earlier who had already been doing in-person speaking engagements like conferences and kind of sharing her expertise, which is a very interesting niche. And then when she showed up at her first event with her new book in hand, not only has she changed, like she just came alive on that stage in a way that she had never experienced before. So there was the authority, the really personal piece for her that she had created this book. But then also people did end up buying a bunch of the book at this thing, and she landed this like huge contract. She had been doing kind of like these one-off projects in her business and then ended up with this contract with like a huge healthcare entity. And the you know I don't know if she landed that contract exactly because of that book, but something shifted for her when she showed up at that speaking engagement with it in hand, and it changed her entire world. It was amazing. It's such a fun story. I love thinking about it.
Thanks for sharing. So, trends and templates, I love them and I use them in my business. But how can entrepreneurs discover discover and trust their own authentic voice, even if they're using a template or using the latest trend? But everyone wants the uniqueness of the author. They want to hear the author's voice. So, how
Mm.
can they bring out their authentic voice, even though they are using the latest trend or templates?
So did you start that question saying that you like to use templates?
I do. I use
Yeah,
templates because it saves
sure.
me time. But
Yeah.
even if I'm using a template, I want to be able to be me.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. This business that I mentioned and that I've worked in all these years, we teach brand new freelancers. That's the business. And we have a lot of templates for them because of people like I get it. I was a student of that program at one time, and you want to, even though your business is very personal and you get to design it from the ground up and all the things and you get completely control, there's also a piece of us that wants it to be a little bit like, I hate to use this word, but turnkey, and like tell me what to say. You know what I mean? Like what words do I use? And so we're always encouraging people that, like, here's a template. You have to bring your voice to it though. Like you're not going to say it how this person is saying. It needs to be conversational. And that means a really, for me, where that begins is really sitting down, and what I coach people is really thinking about who it is you're talking to and what are their felt needs, right? What are their pain points? Who are they? Like, what are they looking for? And then you're just like having a, it's hard, we get, especially with like AI, we get so wrapped up in like, how does it sound and what does it look like? But it just has to be an authentic conversation. You know what I mean? And it has to have really, for you to be very connected to who you're talking to and what it is what are you looking for? What is it that you want? And just being clear about that and okay with it, that you're bringing, whatever, for whatever reason that you're communicating and you're using this template, whether it's social media or emails or whatever the thing is. I think people get nervous about like they're cheating somehow. They're
Oh, yeah.
being inauthentic or they're taking a shortcut. And it's like, no, we're all doing business here. And just be okay with that and just be yourself and be clear about who you're talking to and why.
Hmm, thank
Yeah.
you. So the next question is about marketing. So
Okay.
it's not it's a new space for me. I've been marketing. I wouldn't ever imagine that I'll be a marketer. But that's what I do most times now. I'm trying to market me, market my brand, market what I market my offers. So what does marketing with integrity actually look like in practical everyday business decisions? Because if you are in business, you have to market something.
Yeah. So I have this little saying on my website, and it's like my mantra, which is the way you do anything is the way you do everything. And meaning that, marketing with integrity means leading with integrity in everything that you do and feeling really good about that, and like I just mentioned, like coaching new freelancers. That means, don't, it means little subtle things that you just want them to be in alignment. There are little things in your business, like how you present yourself, and you doing that in a way that's authentic, but you don't need to tell everybody you're brand new, but also don't lie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And those are some of the little things, but then there's big things too, and just how you show up in the work that you do and the way that you provide whatever the thing is that you do, like how do you show up in that, and how do you be a real human being who does what they say they're going to do. I think, out in the freelance market, I know that's a real fear and a real thing, is that people don't show up and they don't do what they said they were going to do. And it's hard to know if you're connecting with like an authentic human being who's going to, again, showing up is a big deal for me. That's why I keep saying it. But yeah, just I think it's just a real clarity around your values in your business and staying true to that and being kind of having that front of mind in anything that you do, even the little things and certainly the big things.
Okay. So what happens when an entrepreneur starts losing their authenticity? Because sometimes you may start out well, but eventually you start losing it, and people can read through it when you're looking fake. Like,
Mhm.
no, this is not real.
Yeah. Well, I know. I'm thinking of a situation that I know of with somebody I worked with for a long time who started her business back when it was organic, right? And it was kind of easy back like 2013, 14, and we could put out videos. And that's when I started online, and it was so fun and easy. And social media was still like, wow, this is amazing. And really had built an incredible business around being authentic and her story. And then over the years, really slipped into the money and like gonna blow it up this year. And there's nothing wrong with that. But when you lead with that, that's where you come out of alignment and you lose touch with your people. And I hate to say it, but that's not the only time I've seen that happen. So I think when we lose touch with our authenticity, I think you're so right. I think people can see right through it. I think we're hyper aware to it right now. I think everybody has kind of like inbox overwhelm and doesn't want to look at their emails anymore because of this. Like, did a human write this? And so when you ask what happens, I think again, there's those clear signposts that it stops working. But does that answer your question? I'm not sure I
Yeah, it
answered.
does. It does.
Yeah, yeah.
It does. Yeah. Yeah. So sometimes when we market, we end up
Mhm.
manipulating or putting pressure on people. So how can we be strategic
Hmm.
visible without crossing into manipulation or
Yeah.
pressure.
We were talking about this earlier, and I think it's such an important point because this is not being authentic is not that's being thrown around so much right now. And like I hang out on LinkedIn a lot, and I don't want to like bash on anybody because I use that too, but it's I really don't want that to become like the next iteration of marketing jargon and strategy and tactic. And you're right, it is a fine line. And for me, and some of the people I see that I work with that I see really kind of resonating with their message and their audiences, it's when you just kind of do it messy sometimes, meaning you part ways with perfection and you bring the messaging in anyway, even when it doesn't feel all the way polished, maybe. I think the humanness in that is what resonates in people. And that doesn't mean you just go do crazy stuff and be messy all the time, but I think it means being okay with being messy sometimes. Because as humans, we are messy. Life is messy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And people don't like it when you try to be you put in that polished, perfect look all the time and playing like
No.
everything is just great, excellent. They want to
Yeah.
see the raw side as well, where things didn't go well, when it was really, really messy and rough. People
Hmm.
want to see that side too, because that is everyday, normal human life. Things are
It's
always rough and messy.
yeah. It can be hard to do. I mean, I've shared with you previously that I've just kind of been coming back online and being more present and visible in the last year, and it's hard to do sometimes when you're like, just do the thing anyway, because you worry that like, oh, is this going to reflect on my brand that I'm a weirdo and nobody's going to want to work with me? Like that's where our thoughts go, right? Or that like I'm not professional or I'm not fancy or I want to have an elevated brand and I want to attract these certain type of people. So I feel like it's a bit of an art. It is carefully managed for sure.
Thank you. So you've mentioned twice now you were online for about 8 years, you said?
I started my business 8 years ago. I did kind of, I won't say the bare minimum, but kind of, I put a website together that felt sort of safe to me. And I was not really, I did little bits here and there, but not active very much at all.
So do you mind sharing why you chose that route?
Sure.
Why did you do that?
Absolutely. How can I say? So 9 years ago, well, my daughter's about to be 10. When she was about 6 months old, I ended up in a women's shelter. I experienced a version of domestic violence that doesn't get talked about as much, which is emotional abuse, basically, meaning that I wasn't being physically abused, but I was, threatened with having my baby taken away from me while I was still pregnant. And yeah, having my life threatened and dealing with somebody who's became very unstable. And so I ended up in a women's shelter and lost all my possessions and my income and had this beautiful 6-month-old baby that I'd waited till I was 40 years old to have. And yeah, I was out of state and away from family and very much at rock bottom in that way. But the beautiful thing about rock bottoms is that the only way out is up. And so it was interesting for me to because when I first started marketing online, I was very active and it was fun and I built this like following and the word influencer wasn't a thing at the time, but that's kind of like what I was doing without realizing it. But that became unsafe for me, meaning that it's hard to think of social media being unsafe. I mean, it's hard and it's not hard, but it was just a way that I was being kind of tracked and harassed and bothered. And so even I mean, in theory, I could have remained active on social media and just decided to deal with it. I couldn't, honestly. Like my nervous system couldn't deal with it. And I just chose to, again, just be very minimal in my posting. I never posted anything about my child. I just didn't want to open that door and invite that in. So it was interesting for me to figure out how then the work I needed to do to move to a place of safety. And even my website that I had created 8 years ago was used to like schedule meetings with me and just let me know that this person was still out there, kind of keeping an eye on me. Yeah, which is a weird thing to do, right? Because I'm supporting this child with this business. You'd think that you would just leave me alone and not interfere with me in that way. But yeah, so that's a little bit of a long-winded answer to why I just kind of went underground.
Okay. So now you're back online.
Yeah.
So for entrepreneurs who feel overwhelmed, who feel threatened like you are, or who are feeling invisible, what's the simplest place for them to begin communicating clearly?
I think the first place to start is to find a place that you feel safe doing that. For me, it's LinkedIn. we're all professionals. We're all hanging out there. I manage some other people's Facebook for them. It's not really work I do anymore, but I support a nonprofit. So I'm over there, but it doesn't feel like a safe place to me, in a few levels because of the story I just told, but also just the energy there feels like a lot. So for me, LinkedIn feels, again, we're like all grown-ups and we're doing business and we're networking, and it's just it's a different vibe. So I think that you have to find your place and your way in that feels. One thing I see people doing is when they decide to become visible, even if they have some of those concerns, like feeling just overwhelmed by it, I see them like trying to do too much all at once. And I think that it's really more helpful and valuable to just pick one thing and to start there, and to see and just to let it evolve from there. There are a lot of different ways now to be visible online, depending on what you do and who you're looking to connect with. And so keeping it simple, I think, is the best way in when you're in that place.
Thank you. So, what is one what is set shift you
Mhm.
recommend to listeners to adopt today to help them communicate more clearly, with confidence and with intention?
One mindset shift would be to really understand how powerful your words are. I could go down a big long thing about this. I've been really reading up and learning more about the actual power of spoken words. Even they're even more powerful than our thoughts, even though thoughts are, we hear a lot about self-limiting beliefs, but I think being very aware, and it is a mindset shift. It's actually, I think, easier to be more aware of the words that you're speaking, whether you're speaking them or writing them, than you're catching your thoughts. But to be speaking your desired result, if you will, your ideal outcome, your future into existence, and not giving energy to the things that you don't want. I think in our current culture where everybody's a little freaked out, it's easy to go down the road of everything that's wrong.
Yeah.
And in that, we're putting our energy into what's wrong and allowing that into our lives more. That's not like meant to sound in a blaming kind of way at all. I just think we have to be more aware and more careful about what we're speaking into existence.
Thank you. Thank you. So, where can this audience find you, and what do they hope to get if they connect with you?
Sure, absolutely. Well, they can find me on my website, which is lauranicholls.com. And also I'm over on LinkedIn just under my name, Laura Nicholls. Excuse me. And I love to connect with people, and I'm always happy just to hop on for a short call. And this to me, the sitting down and the conversation is where I get my energy out of, what I do. And so I find that a lot of times people just kind of need like a sounding board, someone to listen and share ideas, and let them know that they do have a valid story to tell and they do have something to offer to other people.
Thank you very much, Laura, for coming to the show.
Yeah, thank you.
So, what a powerful conversation I've had with Laura today. I hope you felt the clarity, the honesty, the alignment in everything we discussed today. In a world that tries to pull your voice in 100 different directions, remember this, that your message is strongest when it comes from your meaning, not from the noise around you. And if today's episode sparks something in you and you are ready to communicate with more focus, more confidence, and more intention, make sure you check this episode's show notes for Laura's links and resources that she offers. And if you struggle with procrastination, clarity, or staying consistent with your message, my free 7-day sprint workbook is the perfect next step. It will help you gain the momentum in small, doable steps. No burnout, no pressure. So grab this workbook in this episode show notes. And thanks for tuning in to the Minute Mastery podcast. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with someone who could use more time in their day. And remember to subscribe and leave us a review. Until next time, you are in control of your time and